Every morning we say the following blessing. There are a lot of different morning blessings that were instituted by our sages. Some count 18. It depends on how you count. There are a number of questions about certain blessings, whether it's considered one bracha or two. So I'm not going to go into this. But the idea is that we thank Hashem for all kinds of things that are renewed every morning. For example, when we open our eyes, we want to thank Hashem that He gave us eyesight. So one of the blessings is Pokeach Ivrim, that Hashem makes blind people see. And so too many other blessings were instituted. Almost all of them are mentioned in the Talmud in Masechet Brachot. And a few are mentioned in Masechet, in Tractate Menachot. But there is one blessing that we say every day that's not mentioned in our versions of the Talmud, and that is Hanoten la Ya'ef Koach, that Hashem gives strength to the tired person, right? Something to thank Hashem that He made us being able to renew our energy after going to sleep, after getting our sleep. By the way, the Vilna Gaon used to explain this idea that sleep, as opposed to most other things that we need, sleep is somewhat beyond our control, meaning a person might decide not to eat or not to drink, but with sleep, even if you don't want to sleep, you'll fall asleep eventually. So this Hevlei Shena that we say before going to sleep, a blessing that mentions some kind of Hevlei Shena. There are different interpretations exactly what Hevlei here means, but according to the Vilna Gaon, the idea is apparently that sleep kind of draws a person in. The sleep forces a person, forces itself upon a person. And then when we're woken up with the renewed energy, there are a number of blessings, including the one that where we thank Hashem that He gives strength to the tired person. So why do I want to discuss it now? Because in this weekly reading, we have a similar word, but it seems to be a little bit different. And that is ayef. Ya'ef, ayef. The blessing mentions the word Ya'ef, Yud, Ayin, Pei. And in the Torah, we learn about, in the very beginning of our Parsha, of our weekly reading, Toldot, we learn about Esav when he came from the field, Ayef, Ayin, Yud, Pei. So it's almost the same root, except the order is different. Ayin, Yud, or Yud, Ayin. The last letter is Pei, the previous two letters are switched. It doesn't really mean the same thing. So apparently it does. There are some places in the Torah, these are both biblical roots. Sometimes it says Ya'ef, sometimes it says Ayef. There are a few other examples of this. There may be some differences. Of course, it's known that even the synonyms may have differences. The idea of a synonym is not identical words, it just means words that are similar, but they have some specific connotations, each one, and that's what the grammarians try to discuss and explain. There are a lot of very well-known grammarians who worked very hard on distinction of similar words. The Vilna Gaon is known, especially in the book of Mishlei, in the book of Proverbs, in his commentary, and also in other places. Malbim was one of the great sages of grammar, and in particular of discussing the similar words. In fact, most of the commentary of Malbim on the Nevi'im and Ktuvim has two parts. One is the actual commentary, and one where he compares the words. He explains the meaning of words and compares similar words, the synonyms. And there are a few other books that deal with this. There are even, from the times of Rishonim, some discussions on this, in Radak, for instance. So I'm not going to go into this, and a lot of it is somewhat speculative because we don't really have a full proof, but I guess the sages are trying, based on the various verses, that use a word to explain the difference. Like Ish and Adam, for instance. What's the difference? Simcha and Sason, all kinds of synonyms. So, in particular, if Ya'ef and Ayef means the same thing, there may be still a slight difference. For instance, Kesev and Keves, a similar example where two letters are switched in the same root. Both mean a ship. But Malbim tries to explain the difference between these two types of ship, Keves and Kesev. Salma, Simla, again, similar idea that two letters are switched and it's the same root. So Ayef and Ya'ef definitely mean something very similar, or maybe even identical. The same, maybe these two words have identical meaning. And it basically means a tired person. Hashem gives strength to the tired people. So why does our blessing have Ya'ef and not Ayef? I think the idea is obvious. Usually the blessings are based on certain verses in the Torah, in the Tanakh. For example, a lot of these blessings are based on 145th and 146th Psalms. Many of the blessings, if you watch carefully, they are based on those Psalms. And Hanoten La'eif Koach is probably based on a verse in Yeshayahu, in Prophet Isaiah. There's a verse like that Hashem gives strength to the tired. What's interesting about this blessing is that, as I said, it's not mentioned in the Talmud, in our versions of the Talmud. Now, one possibility is that maybe there were some other manuscripts that did mention it. At least it is mentioned in relatively early sources to make this blessing. But the truth is there was a dispute of great sages whether to say this blessing or not. The greatest authority for Sephardic Jews is, of course, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the author of Shulchan Aruch, the main code of Jewish law. This sage lived the last part of his life in the land of Israel 500 years ago, and his code of law that he wrote was very much accepted by all Sephardic Jewry, and to a large extent it's followed. More than 90% of it, probably 99% of it, is followed by Sephardim today, with very few exclusions. And this is one of the exclusions. The psak, the decision of Rabbi Yosef Karo is not to say this blessing every day, because it's not in the Talmud, so he follows the opinions that we shouldn't be saying it. And yet the Sephardim do say it. One reason the Sephardim might be saying it is because Arizal, a great sage of Kabbalah, of Jewish mysticism, did explain the need of this blessing and gave it a Kabbalistic spin. Of course, all of the commentary of Arizal to the prayer, what's called Shara Kavanot. It was written by his student, but Rabbi Chaim Vital, but it's based on teachings of Arizal. It gives a mystical understanding, explanation to all our prayers, and he says that whatever the spiritual light that this blessing corresponds to, it does exist, and therefore this blessing should be said. So that's the reason why you might say Sephardim accepted to say this blessing. However, there are some Sephardic sages that think that when Arizal argues with Rabbi Yosef Karo, we should not follow Arizal. Even Sephardim shouldn't follow Arizal. In particular, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, one of the greatest sages in the recent generations, of course, very well known, and his decisions, his halakhic decisions got very much accepted by Sephardic Jewry. And yet he says that generally the Sephardim follow Rabbi Yosef Karo. They accepted to follow Rabbi Yosef Karo, not Arizal. And still, even Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, even he still does support the custom to say this blessing. Now, in terms of us, Ashkenazim, practically all Ashkenazim say this blessing because the Rama says to say it. So, Rama is our main authority. The Shulchan Aruch consists of two parts. Rabbi Yosef Karo wrote his original Shulchan Aruch, but there were additional notes, a gloss that was written by Rama, Rabbi Moshe Isserlis, and he says that we, the Ashkenazic Jews, do say this blessing. So in the end, like I said, even Sephardic Jews ended up saying it, so basically everybody says it with very few exclusions. And the blessing is, by Sephardim, it's said somewhere in the middle, where it belongs, I guess, according to logic. But Ashkenazim say it last, because apparently it was added later than the others, so therefore it's kind of an appendix. After saying all the other blessings, we say also Hanoten La'eif Koach. And may Hashem be kind to us and give us the strength that we need. Give us this koach. We're all tired. As a nation, we're tired. We're tired of wars. We're tired of persecution. But Hashem renews our strength every time. And may it be the divine will that we will have strength. Each of us and as a nation combined will have the strength to continue. May it happen in our time that our strength will totally renewed. And maybe Zocher, as it says, Hashem oz le'amo yiten, Hashem yivarech et amo b'shalom. Hashem will give strength to his people, Hashem will bless his people with peace.